Have you ever noticed how your blood sugar seems to have a mind of its own after meals? 1 minute you feel fine. An hour later, you're exhausted. Then suddenly shaky, foggy, anxious. I'm Dr. Christina Serrati. And over the years, I've worked with many adults over 60 who believe those crashes were just part of aging.
Oh.
They weren't. Most people are told to focus on fasting glucose numbers. But what truly damages the body often happens after you eat. Those sharp post-meal spikes followed by dramatic drops. And here's what surprises many of my patients. Sometimes, the support they need isn't another prescription. It's a simple kitchen spice. But before you run to your pantry, we need to talk about something important. Because the type matters more than most people. Realize there are actually two main varieties sold under the same name. One is gentle and traditionally used in parts of the world for metabolic support. The other is far more common in American grocery stores, cheaper, stronger tasting, and not ideal for daily high intake. Most bottles simply say cinnamon. That's the problem. The variety commonly sold in large supermarkets is called Cassia cinnamon. It contains higher levels of a naturally occurring compound called coumarin. In small amounts, it's not a concern, but taken daily in large quantities, coumarin can stress the liver in sensitive individuals. The less common variety is called Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled as true cinnamon or cinnamon verum. It contains dramatically lower coumarin levels and has a softer, lighter flavor. Why does this matter? Because research over the past 2 decades has explored how certain compounds in cinnamon may help support insulin sensitivity and slow the rise of blood sugar after meals. But the benefits when studied were typically observed with specific forms and controlled amounts. This isn't about replacing medication. This isn't about ignoring your physician. And it's absolutely not about miracle cures. It's about understanding options that are often never discussed in a standard 10-minute appointment. When someone comes to me feeling frustrated dealing with post-meal fatigue, reactive hunger, or unstable readings on their glucose monitor, the first thing I ask is, what happens after you eat? Because those swings matter. In the next part, I'm going to explain why blood sugar spikes happen more easily after 60. What insulin resistance actually means in plain English, and how this simple spice may support the process differently than certain digestive medications. And I'll also tell you about a patient of mine, we'll call him Martin, whose numbers changed in a way that even surprised him, as we move past 60. Our bodies don't process carbohydrates the same way they did at 30 or 40, and this is where most of the frustration begins. You eat a bowl of oatmeal, or a sandwich, or even fruit. Within an hour, your blood sugar rises. That's normal. But instead of gently returning to baseline, it spikes higher than it should, then crashes. Let me explain what's happening in simple terms. When you eat carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks them down into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream. Your pancreas releases insulin, a hormone that acts like a key, unlocking your cells so glucose can move inside and be used for energy in a healthy, responsive system. Blood sugar rises moderately. Insulin responds, glucose enters cells. Levels return to normal within about 2 hours, but with age, and especially in people with insulin resistance, the locks on the cells don't respond as efficiently to insulin. That means your pancreas has to release more insulin to do the same job. More insulin often leads to a sharper drop later. So instead of a smooth curve, you get a roller coaster. Spike, crash, crash. And that crash, what many people call reactive hypoglycemia, can feel awful, shaky, sweaty, foggy, irritable suddenly. Hungry again. Many of my patients tell me, Dr. Serrati, I feel like I can't go 3 hours without eating. It's not lack of willpower, it's physiology. Now here's where things get interesting. Certain medications, like alpha-glucosidase inhibitors, work by slowing carbohydrate digestion in the small intestine. In theory, this reduces the spike. But because more undigested carbs reach the colon, some people experience gas, bloating, and discomfort. That's why many patients look for gentler options to support stability. This is where cinnamon enters the conversation. Compounds found in Ceylon cinnamon particularly, polyphenols and cinnamaldehyde have been studied for their potential role in supporting insulin receptor sensitivity, encouraging better glucose uptake by cells, slightly slowing gastric emptying. Simple terms, it may help your body respond more efficiently to the insulin you already produce. That means less dramatic spikes, less dramatic crashes. Now let me tell you about Martin. Martin was 67 when he came to see me. His fasting glucose hovered around 115 to 125. But his real issue wasn't fasting levels, it was what happened after meals. His continuous glucose monitor showed peaks above 210 after breakfast. Then 2 hours later, he'd drop into the low 70s. He felt miserable. We didn't remove his doctor's plan. We didn't stop monitoring. We didn't make radical diet changes. Instead, we added one specific structured adjustment, and that's what I'll explain in part 3. The exact type of cinnamon, the amount studied in research, the timing that appears to matter most, and what changed in Martin's first week asterisk. Now let's talk specifics, because when it comes to cinnamon and blood sugar support, details matter. First, the type. If the label simply says cinnamon, it is most likely Cassia. Cassia cinnamon is widely available and inexpensive. It has a stronger flavor, the kind many people grew up with in cinnamon rolls or baked goods. But for daily metabolic support, I recommend looking specifically for Ceylon cinnamon, also labeled as cinnamon verum, sometimes called true cinnamon. Why? Because Ceylon contains significantly lower levels of coumarin. It's a compound that can stress the liver when consumed in higher daily amounts over time. If someone is going to use cinnamon consistently, safety matters. Second, the amount. Research has explored a range between 1 to 6 grams per day. To make that practical, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon approximately equals to 2.5 grams. For most adults, I typically suggest starting with 1/2 to 1 teaspoon with a meal, not all at once, not on an empty stomach, and not sprinkled randomly during the day. Which brings us to the third and often overlooked detail: colon timing. Cinnamon appears most helpful when consumed with carbohydrate-containing meals. Why? Because that's when blood sugar rises. The compounds in cinnamon may help support insulin signaling and modestly slow carbohydrate absorption, but only if they're present during digestion. If you take it hours before eating, the effect is likely minimal. This is exactly what Martin did. We started conservatively, 1/2 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon with breakfast, 1/2 teaspoon with dinner. He mixed it into oatmeal in the morning and added it to roasted vegetables or tea in the evening. We monitored carefully. Day 1, his breakfast spike was still elevated, but not as dramatic. Day 3, his peak dropped nearly 25 points compared to his previous average. Most importantly, he didn't crash 2 hours later. By the end of the first week, his glucose monitor showed something different. Not perfection, but stability. His peaks were lower. His drops were gentler. His energy between meals improved. Now, let me be clear. This wasn't magic. It wasn't overnight reversal. And it absolutely wasn't a replacement for medical care. But it was a supportive adjustment that made his system more predictable. And predictability reduces stress, both physical and emotional. In part 4, I'm going to explain why stability matters more than a single fasting number, what a 1C actually reflects and what it doesn't, why crashes can trigger cravings and weight gain, and what happened after Martin continued this for 30 days. Most people obsess over one number, fasting glucose. They wake up, check it, and if it's under 100, they feel relieved. But here's what many don't realize. The real damage often happens after meals, not during fasting. A fasting number is just a snapshot. What matters more is the pattern. When blood sugar spikes sharply above 180 after meals, it places stress on the lining of your blood vessels. Repeated spikes may contribute to inflammation and long-term metabolic strain. Then, when insulin overcorrects, the crash that follows can leave you feeling shaky, weak, and anxious. That crash isn't just uncomfortable. It can trigger intense sugar cravings, overeating at the next meal, fatigue that reduces physical activity, mood swings, and brain fog. It becomes a cycle. Spike gives, crash gives, crave gives. Repeat. This is why stability matters more than chasing a single perfect. Reading now, let's talk about A1C. Hemoglobin A1C reflects your average blood sugar over about 3 months. But here's the nuance. You can have an A1C that looks acceptable while still experiencing dramatic daily swings. Imagine 2 people. Person A, blood sugar steady around 140 all day. Person B spikes to 220 after meals, crashes to 65 2 hours later. Both could end up with a similar A1C average, but physiologically, they feel completely different. Stability supports energy, mental clarity, and appetite control. That's what happened with Martin. After 30 days of consistently using Ceylon cinnamon with meals, along with continuing his physician's guidance, his daily glucose curve looked smoother, not flat, not perfect, but smoother. His average post-meal peaks dropped by about 30 to 40 points compared to baseline. More importantly, he stopped experiencing the dramatic crashes. He told me something I'll never forget. Dr. Serrati, I'm not thinking about food every 2 hours anymore. That's stability. Over the next 3 months, his A1C decreased modestly. Not a miracle drop, but a meaningful improvement. And it aligned with what we were seeing on his continuous monitor. Fewer spikes, fewer crashes. He didn't change everything overnight. He didn't eliminate all carbohydrates. He didn't start an extreme diet. He made a small, consistent adjustment and monitored the results carefully. And this brings up something very important. Cinnamon works best as part of a broader strategy. In Part 5, I'm going to explain who should not use high amounts of cinnamon, when to be cautious if you're on medication, why some people see no change at all, and the 3 additional habits that make cinnamon significantly more effective. Asterisk before anyone rushes to add cinnamon to every meal. We need to talk about safety and expectations, because even natural compounds require thoughtful use first. Who should be cautious? If you are currently taking insulin sulfonylureas, GLP-1 medications, or any glucose-lowering prescription, you must monitor carefully. Why? Because if your medication is already lowering your blood sugar effectively, and you add another supportive tool, your levels could dip lower than expected. I've seen this happen. Not dangerously, not enough to cause lightheadedness or readings in the 60s. That's why I always tell my patients, if you're making any dietary adjustment that may influence glucose, track your numbers closely for 2 weeks and keep your physician informed. Second, liver concerns. This is where type matters again. Large, daily amounts of cassia cinnamon, the common grocery store version, contain higher coumarin levels. In sensitive individuals, excessive intake over long periods may elevate liver enzymes. Ceylon cinnamon contains dramatically less coumarin, which is why I recommend it for consistent use. Third, why some people see no change at all. This part is important. Cinnamon is not a cure. It is not a substitute for addressing insulin resistance, and it cannot override excessive refined carbohydrate intake. If someone continues consuming sugary beverages, large portions of white bread or pasta, frequent desserts, minimal protein or fiber, cinnamon will not cancel that out. It works best when paired with 3 foundational habits. Protein with every meal. Protein slows digestion and supports stable glucose response. Fiber from whole foods, vegetables, legumes, and intact grains, moderate absorption. Gentle post-meal movement. Even a 10-minute walk after eating significantly reduces glucose spikes. When Martin combines cinnamon with a short walk after dinner, His evening peaks dropped even further, not dramatically, but measurably. And measurable improvement is what we want now. There's one more important detail most people overlook: the form. Powder mixed into food tends to integrate better during digestion than capsules taken separately. While supplements exist, I typically prefer the culinary form because it naturally combines with fats and proteins during the meal. In Part 6, I'm going to cover exactly how to identify authentic Ceylon cinnamon, how much is too much, how long it typically takes to notice changes, and the biggest misconception people have about natural blood sugar support. If you're going to try this, let's make sure you do it correctly. Because the biggest mistake I see: people grab the cheapest bottle on the shelf and assume all cinnamon is the same. It isn't. When you're shopping, look specifically for Ceylon cinnamon or the botanical name Cinnamon verum, sometimes labeled true cinnamon. If the bottle only says cinnamon with no clarification, it is almost always cassia. Here's how else you can tell. Ceylon is lighter in color, tan, or light brown. Cassia is darker and more reddish. Ceylon sticks, if buying whole, look thin and layered like a cigar. Cassia sticks are thick and single-layer. Retooling usually costs more. That's normal. It's sourced primarily from Sri Lanka and is less mass-produced. Now, let's talk about how much is reasonable. For most adults, 1/2 to 1 teaspoon with a carbohydrate-containing meal. Up to about 2 teaspoons total daily. More is not better. I don't recommend exceeding that without professional guidance, and this is critical. Cinnamon supports glucose response. It does not treat diabetes. It does not replace medication. And it does not eliminate the need for monitoring. This is where the biggest misconception lies. Many people think natural means unlimited. It doesn't. Even supportive compounds work best within structured boundaries. When Martin continued his routine, for 3 months, cinnamon with meals, balanced protein intake, short walks after dinner, his numbers improved steadily, not dramatically overnight, but steadily. His post-meal spikes were consistently lower. His crashes disappeared. His energy stabilized. His cravings decreased. His A1C moved in the right direction. And perhaps most importantly, he felt back in control. That feeling matters because metabolic health isn't just about lab values. It's about how you feel living in your body every day. Now, let me leave you with something important. If you're curious about trying Ceylon cinnamon, start small. Pair it with meals, not alone. Monitor your numbers. Keep your healthcare provider informed and pay attention to how you feel between meals. Stability, clarity, steady, energy. Those are the signals we're looking for. I'm Dr. Christina Serrati, and sometimes the most powerful shifts don't come from dramatic overhauls, but from consistent, informed adjustments made with intention. If you found this helpful, let me know.